Hi guys, today we're going to learn how to use GitHub and Git source code control management tool, and it is one of the most widely used version control systems, which will allow you to basically keep track of your files within your projects. And it doesn't have to be a programming project; it could be any other project that involves some files which will change over time. And Git will allow you to control basically every version of that file and revert to it if you needed to. It is a very significant addition to any programmer's tool set, and in fact, it's one of the priority questions in the job interview, if especially if it involves working with other people. But even if programming is just a hobby for you, Git is really nice tool to have because it allows you to use remote hosting repositories like GitHub, which we're going to use today. And it also means that your code is safe online if something happens to your hard drive or something. So the first thing you'll need to do is set up a GitHub account, and you can go to GitHub by just typing github.com. This is my account for GitHub, and once you've created yours, it will be something like that. If you type LMSB just after github.com, you'll be able to see the page that I currently have on the screen. You can follow me if you want to. This means that you'll be notified of new projects, or you can just start a single project, the one that you'll be interested in. For example, FX Tutorials is the project that I use, or repository that I use to push code related to YouTube channel, this one. Okay, so you can, and so basically in this tutorial, we're just going to cover very basic commands for Git, sort of the essential commands that you'll need to have to use it in a sort of everyday programming. Right, now, once you've created your account, I think this might be a good time to pause the video and actually create your account. And once you do that, you can come back to the video and continue. So I'll be assuming that you have created the account, and next thing would be to download Git tool to your machine, and you can choose different operating system if you're on Mac or Linux. And in fact, Linux might even have Git installed by default. But if you're using Linux, you pretty much know your way around command line, so you should be able to easily download it from one of the available repositories. As for Windows or Mac, I'd suggest downloading command line tool rather than user interface tool, because the command line tool is easier to work with most of the time. All right, so once you've done that, you should have something, well, you'll install it obviously, and once you do that, the defaults, by the way, are fine. Just click next, next, and install. And once you get this on your desktop, make sure to select or tick the box that says desktop icon. So once you do that, you'll be able to see something like that. It will probably say 2.6.2 since it's the latest version for all at the moment anyway. So once you run this, you'll be prompted with command line, which is slightly different from the Windows command line. It is a different shell that brings certain Linux commands to Windows environment, and also brings the Git tool that you're able now to use from the shell. So next step, right? Go to your GitHub account. You'll need to sign in, and you'll be able to click here and select new repository. The repository name, this is the name that you'll use for your project, mostly. So I'm going to call it YouTube tutorial. This is just for this tutorial to show you how to create one and clone it and so on. This is the description of the repository or your project. Select public, initialize the repository with readme, so click that or select that box. Git ignore is essentially which files you will ignore from the control system, and if you're using a different programming language, because you can use pretty much anything with Git. You can select any language that you'll be using. I'll just select Java, although it doesn't really matter for this tutorial. License, again, doesn't matter. You can select MIT. This is the most permissive license, as far as I'm aware. So you might select that and just create a repository. Make sure you remember the name of the repo that you created, because we'll be using that to clone it to your local machine. So essentially, what we've created now was a remote repository, which is hosted on GitHub, basically remote server. And in order to be able to use it locally, you'll need to clone that. And first of all, let's just make a temporary directory. Although I have, so I'll just go in here and do that. Make sure you create a new directory. You can use it. You can use the user interface if you want to. Just create new folder, name it whatever you want, like TMP or something. Then you will need to navigate there, and the command line navigation command is cd, which stands for current directory. So by default, it will start from this directory, which is your basically user home directory. If you're using Windows, that will be C users and your username. From there, you can navigate to desktop, where I'm hoping you've created a temporary directory. So cd desktop, and then cd tmp or whatever your directory name is. Instead of that, I'll just use a different folder because I already have one. From there, once you've entered your directory, you can type pwd to print working directory, and it should print something like C users, your username, desktop, and tmp or whatever your folder name is. From there, you can type git, and this is the sort of basic commands that you'll need to remember. So I suggest you either keep going back to the video or just type them somewhere in Notepad and just remember for a few days. After you keep repeating those, because they are repeated and most of the time it's the same commands essentially, you'll easily remember those and you won't need anything to read from really. Okay, so git clone https colon 2 forward slashes github.com slash your username that you've created for your account. In my case, it's elmasb. Make sure you type it correctly. Then actually, you can kind of use this, although you won't be able to push. So I suggest you do create your own account. lsb slash then the name of the repository that you've just created, which is YouTube tutorial. This will clone whatever files there were in this repository to your local machine. So if you do ls, you should be able to see, you won't be seeing that, you'll just see this YouTube tutorial, hopefully. Now you can do cd in that to that folder, and you can then just do ls, which is list files, which will list or directories, so which will list things in that directory, which is essentially a license and readme.md. And if you can see here, these are the exact files that you've just cloned to your local repository. Now, next thing would be to create a file and essentially push it. And by doing so, we'll also set up your local Git config to your GitHub account. And we can do that by just creating first a test file. I'll do test.txt. Touch will create a file test.txt in your current directory. This should be available to you because it is one of the commands that come with the shell. And if you do ls again, you should be able to see .txt in there. Although there is nothing in there because it's just an empty txt file. What I'm going to do is git add. Again, you'll need to remember those exact lines that you can see on the screen. This will have added that file that we specified to the list of registered files that you're going to commit and then push. So basically, once you've made any changes to your local repository, you will need to add those changes with git add. This only adds as an intermediate step. You then need to commit, and you can commit them by doing git commit -m space open quote, and in the quotes you will type a message which essentially describes what you're committing or why you're committing it. So for example, if you fixed a bug or you added a new feature, you might document it here. So this allows you to keep track of what you've done. And I'll just type what I've done. I added test.txt. Then close quote. This will, if you're doing this for the first time, and you probably are, it will tell you, will ask you to enter certain things about you. First of all, it's your email and your username. Your email is the one that you use to register your GitHub account, and the same with your username. So once you see this message, luckily it tells you what you actually need to do. So you just type what it says. Global user email. My email that I used is the same I use for Google. And this is going to be your email that you use to register your GitHub account. Otherwise, it won't work. And the next thing is username. Again, make sure you type exactly as it is on your GitHub account. And once you've done that, you can repeat the commit, which will now succeed, hopefully. Yep, it will say what it's done with the local repo. It will say one file changed, so and you created this file. So there are no insertions and no deletions because we haven't really done anything. So once you've committed that file, you will finally need to push. And if you're pushing for the first time, you will be prompted with this basically message that you can then alter. And it will ask you for your username, and then password that you use to log in on your into your GitHub account. And once you've completed those, it will, if you've done everything correctly, it will basically say this, that it pushed your new commit to the repo. And we can update now the repo to see that there is now test.txt file added just a minute ago to your remote repo, which doesn't really contain anything. At least you can see how that thing works. Now you can see that it's saying to use new behavior, do that, and just to make things simpler, do this right now so that you'll then just forget about it. Oops. Simple. Yeah. Yeah, sure. So that should be fine. Right, so now we've pushed that file. And once you've done that, so this was kind of the setup steps that you'll need to do. Next time you do something like that, so we're going to create test2.txt, and then as just a repeating step, we'll just do the same. Git add, so you'll hopefully remember what we're doing. Git add, so we're going to add our addition to your local repository. We're going to then commit with a message, added test2.txt. So this will commit your thing, and it won't ask for your email or username again because you've already done the configuration. And you can then simply push, although it will ask you every time for security reasons. And if you don't want the repo, this particular repository, to ask you for username or password again, you can do git config credential .helper store. This will store your username and password for this particular repository. So that every time you then git push, it won't ask you for a password. And if we go back to our web user interface, you should be able to see test2.txt, which is again there. Finally, I'd like to go over git pull because this is one of the essential commands. So if we create a file from the remote repository now, because so far what we've been doing is creating files locally and then pushing to a remote repository. So that's so that the repository is now synchronized with your local repository. What we're going to do now is create a new file remotely and then synchronize your local repository with remote one. Test3.txt, and we're even going to add something. This is a text file. And we're going to say, so this is your commit using a web interface. Edit test3.txt and commit new file. So this created test3.txt remotely, so it's hosting it on the server. But if you do ls, which lists files and directories, you can see that you only have those things that you had before and not synchronized. So in order to synchronize, you can do git pull, which will connect to the server and pull all of the latest changes. And there's only one change, which is test3.txt. So if you do ls now, you should be able to see that file. And we can even do a cat on it. Cat will essentially list all the lines contained within the file argument. So if you do test3.txt, you can see the line that we put just moments ago. This is a text file. Right, so this sort of concludes the basic commands for Git and how to use it with GitHub. And yeah, that should be enough for this tutorial, I think. So yeah, like I said, just play around with these. Make sure you remember all those steps. And there are really, 3 steps? Yeah, so you make changes, and those changes will be coming probably from your IDE or Notepad, depending on whatever you use to edit your source code files. You can use any programming language you want because, as you can see, it only tracks files, so it doesn't really care what kind of files it tracks. So once you've done your changes, you do git add. You need to add every single file in there that you may change on. Then you git commit, and then you git push in order to push your changes to your remote repository. In order to pull changes from remote repository, because say you have a second laptop that you use when you're at work, and when you have a desktop at home, and so you'll end up with sort of files which are not synchronized to a remote repository. You can do git pull to pull all the latest changes to your local machine. And this should be it, really. Thanks for watching.